And you're not going to demand I give up my desire to dive way too deep into every little etymological reference?
That attachment presents difficulties, but they are your difficulties.
Oh, another way of asking me to give it up.
Accept the possibility. That is all.
I can't.
You won't?
I mean what I say. I'm incapable.
And if someone showed you how?
I almost said that would set me free, but
yes,
I could not be free. Not while scripting these episodes.
A shorter script, Leo, will set you free, I promise.
I'll never be free. 30 pages, 40 pages. Make the scripts as long as possible.
Welcome to Gom Jabbar, your guide to the iconic world of Dune. We'll be exploring the themes, philosophies, and characters found in the sandy depths of this vast universe, from Frank Herbert's groundbreaking novels to the adaptations on film and TV. My name's Abu.
And my name is Leo.
And Leo, we're back.
Yes, we are.
Continuing our journey through the pages of Chapterhouse Dune.
I feel like Frank decided at some point that these chapters, like this middle of the book, would be each chapter is a novella.
Yep.
Worth of information and context. And again, scripting 3, I was kicking myself. I was like, we should be doing 2 chapters at a time.
It's a lot.
It's
much. Dense.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. We have moved on from the point in the book where it's just Odreid in her office thinking. Things are now suddenly happening.
Yeah, which is great as a reader. As a podcaster covering the content, suddenly we have a lot of work. We can't
so
just be like,
cover.
hey, guess what's happening? You're right. She's in the office thinking again. Anyway, before we get too far into it, let's take care of our housekeeping.
Yes.
Shout out Mapes is eagerly waiting for us to handle our housekeeping responsibilities. So starting off, spoiler warning. Again, book club episode, no spoilers beyond the pages and books we've covered thus far. So if you are caught up with the reading, you are safe to listen.
That is right. And of course, up top, a huge shout out to our Kwisatz Haderach level patrons. That's Daniel Dion, Seth Redden Greer, Brad Hutchins, Kevin Mahanram, and Roger Young.
Sheesh.
Folks,
Yeah.
my battle plan to take down the Honored Matre, not as complex as Teg's.
Right.
It just involves
Yeah.
sending our 5 Kwisatz Haderach level patrons up to Junction to win over the Spider Queen for us. Honestly, they're going to melt her heart, and she's going to join our side. She's going to become a patron.
You're too generous. I give up.
Exactly.
Dama.
That's the battle plan. So I hope Daniel, Seth, Brad, Kevin, and Roger are suited up to be sent to Junction.
It's a pretty simple draft. Yeah. Congratulations, guys. You're the front line.
That's right. They're the front line. But of course, look, we have a pretty healthy amount of reserve soldiers as well, because our heartfelt thank yous also extend to all of our patrons at every level who truly make this war against the Honored Matres possible. We thank you all so much for your service.
That's true. It's weird, but it's true. And listen, if that sales pitch for becoming a monthly supporter on Patreon, we're going to send you to Junction to die to the Honored Matre. If that's not enticing enough, you can also support the show with a one-time tip. We'll just tell Dama about those tips, and she'll she'll give up. She'll be like, they're generous, your supporters.
That's right.
And we're like,
That's right.
They're great.
Kill her with kindness.
So with housekeeping out of the way, you all know the game plan for today's episode. It's a book club. So we're going to begin with a summary of 3 novella-sized chapters. Then we're going to dive a little bit into a takeaway. It's the elephant in the room we don't want to talk about, but we should. And finally, we're going to wrap up with some yummy spice morsels, both of which deep and weird. Deep and weird today.
Yeah.
But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere, dear listener. When we're back, we're talking about Chapter 31.
Welcome back, folks. Let's start, as always, by summarizing the assigned rating for today's episode. In our first chapter today, Chapter 31, Odreid visits Marbella in the training room of the No Ship, where the former honored matre is pushing the training dummy, the training machine, past its limits.
Yeah.
This is very Alia coded from Dune Messiah.
Oh my God, yes.
This whole scene. So Odrade briefly watches Murbella do her thing. She's both impressed and horrified that Murbella, a very pregnant Murbella, mind you,
very pregnant,
has pushed this machine. Literally, she's like hijacked the wires to make the machine more dangerous than it's supposed to be.
She's modded it into a harder difficulty.
She's truly modded it. It's wild stuff. But eventually, Odrade gets stressed enough that she goes over and flips the switch and turns the machine off, and the two of them have a chat.
Yeah.
Their conversation covers a number of different topics, but the through line is pretty clear. Murbella has committed fully to becoming a Bene Gesserit, to undergoing the agony, and Odrade is elated by what she sees in Murbella, the growth and transformation that she sees in the former honored matre.
Yeah.
So let's, in this summary, touch on just a few notable moments from their chat. Starting with the fact that Murbella is clearly important to Odrade's schemes. Whatever Odrade has been scheming up and cooking up this entire book, Murbella is a key ingredient. And we learned that it's for more than her honored matre's sexual abilities. Murbella herself recognizes this, and she says, "You don't just want my abilities, do you? I'm important to you in some other way. You never actually intended to even use me for the sexual abilities." And Odrade's like, yeah.
Yeah.
You're totally right.
Yeah.
You're important to us beyond the abilities because, look, we don't really need you for your abilities. Shiana has already mastered them.
Yeah.
So why are we still keeping you around? Why are we training you? It's because we have a higher purpose for you.
Right.
This is also a bit of an aside here, but the Shiana mention is also where we learn that Shiana is currently on the No ship as Odrade and Murbella are speaking, and Shiana is making final preparations for the reawakening of Miles Teg.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And of course, we know that's going to happen next chapter, but we get a little bit of foreshadowing here about it.
Yeah.
So returning to this conversation between Odrade and Murbella, the thorny subject of Murbella and Duncan's relationship also comes up.
Yeah.
And Murbella is steadfast in her love for Duncan. She insists that's never going to change, that love will never go away, agony or no agony. And you know what? Fuck you. You're just going to have to be okay with that, Mother Superior and the rest of the sisterhood at Belanda.
Yeah. She's got both middle fingers up, but they form a heart for Duncan.
That's right. Love.
But also, fuck you.
Now, I loved Odrade's song and dance here because she plays the dutiful Mother Superior. The Kamais are watching, right? But, of course, we, the reader, know that secretly this core of love is exactly what Odrade is trying to cultivate within Murbella and at large within the sisterhood as an institution. In fact, it seems that this love may actually be why Murbella is so important for Odrade's plans. Here's a really fascinating thought from Odrade that stuck out to me. Quote, "The Bene Gesserit must change its ways, and here is one who could guide us into change." End quote.
Holy hell.
And Odrade's thoughts in the conversation basically doubled down on this idea when Lady Jessica and her betrayal against the sisterhood, her betrayal for love, comes up. Again, Odrade play acts very beautifully, and she's like, oh, well, Jessica this, Jessica that. Well, look at the consequences of her choices. But secretly, she thinks this absolutely juicy thought. Quote, "Defy us, Murbella. Do it more adroitly than Jessica." End quote.
Absolutely insane. Can you imagine your parents being like, you're going, oh, but my like older sibling snuck out and got caught and got in trouble. And you're saying I should like, what if I sneak out? And the parents thinking, yeah, just don't get fucking caught, dog. Do it better.
Right. Do it better.
We're getting both sides of Odrade's interpretation. She's going, okay, the official thing I should say is, yeah, Jessica's a criminal and she was made an example of. But her internal thoughts are so much more revealing. And both of those mean so much to us now that we know so much about the universe.
And we can see Murbella is being molded somewhat secretly by Odrade, because recall, Odrade is constantly here having one-on-one lessons and meetings with Marbella and the No Ship.
Right.
Marbella is being molded into what perhaps Odrade thinks is the Bene Gesserit 2.0.
Yeah.
The version of the Bene Gesserit that maintains that core of humanity, maintains that core of love and passion and living, all the things that make life worth living, that the Bene Gesserit have forgotten and lost and foregone over the millennia.
Yeah. Cooking beans with garlic or whatever that recipe was.
Okay, so to wrap up the chapter, at the end of their conversation, Marbella ultimately agrees to coach Shiana, and she reaffirms her commitment to undergoing the agony. I will become a sister. I will undergo this agony. I will become a reverend mother. Watch me.
Mm-hmm.
The final lines of this chapter I found to be really chilling, because Marbella, in the final moments here, realizes that Odrade plans to force the child Gola of her own father into sexual subjugation through Shiana.
Right.
And this horrifies her.
Yeah.
Quote, "The Bene Gesserit is all to a reverend mother. Great door, protect me. Will I be like that?" End quote.
Yeah. Again, this is the theme of the book, but it's still shocking to hear it so kind of, I don't know, on its face.
To be put so bluntly, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that leads us into chapter 32. Now, our next chapter begins with Scytale as he's leaning. He's just leaning next to his little like prison guard cell, his like barrier that keeps him enclosed. And there's a bunch of activity on the No Ship. He's like, what's going on? Is it someone's birthday? Is it a quinceañera? Is this another Bad Bunny concert? Hell yeah. But no, in fact, it is delivery day. Marbella's baby is on its way.
Yay.
Very exciting. We do get some hints here that he has secret knowledge about the No Ship and sort of hints of a desperate ploy he might attempt to escape.
Mm-hmm.
But again, no time to be concerned with any of that now, because immediately the chapter whips us over to Odrade's perspective.
Right.
Because she's thinking, hey, Marbella is, busy giving birth to a human. Great timing to initiate the awakening of Miles Tegg, legendary Bashar. I'll also just say, good Lord, after how slow and plodding some of these chapters have been, this chapter hits like a sack of bricks.
Oh, yeah.
So much happens. And just sitting down to be like, let's quickly summarize what happened in this chapter. Almost impossible. But we did our best. Sit back and enjoy as we attempt to summarize this chapter.
Against our will.
Against our will.
To be clear.
This is probably one of the harder chapters ever. Streggy brings young Miles Tegg into a carefully prepared room. This kind of like bedchamber with some of his things, as Odrade, Duncan, and others watch through a two-way mirror. This is like an observation room, and Duncan is in the observation room with Odrade, with a few other like proctors and like high-level Bene Gesserit Reverend Mothers who seem to be there for damage control. Whether they need to restrain Duncan, whether they need to kill Tegg, whether like there are a lot of contingencies that these women are here for. Everyone is on edge. Duncan is clearly a little distracted about the love of his life, his anchor in this universe. Marbella is giving birth. She might die. Who knows? And he's second guessing this decision, which was his. He and Shiana were the ones to propose, rather than going the classic route of breaking someone's psyche by making them do something so fundamentally against their like chorused belief, right?
Yeah.
But that experience, Duncan knows firsthand, is so unimaginably painful that the second awakening he experienced with Marbella, maybe that's the path forward.
Right.
That was the idea. But now that he's watching this like naked 9-year-old boy in this room alone, confused, lost, isolated, he's recognizing the fucking monstrosity of what he has proposed. And he's dealing with that.
Yeah.
Odrade reminds him, very unhelpfully, quote, "The Bashar was not a child. It's the Bashar we're awakening." End quote.
Such an important line.
Such an important line. And if we are to measure what people are victims of by the way that they suffer after the fact. It might be a valid distinction to make. Like, it is not going to be a child dealing with the ramifications of this moment. It's going to be the Bashar.
Right.
But even that feels like a giant fucking pretzel twist to get to. It's not that bad, you know? And it's like, no, Drade. It is that fucking bad. What are you talking about?
Right. And I think the other deeply morally questionable thing about this is if it works out like we think it will. This whole time, they're like, we have no idea if this will work. We might simply be assaulting a child and getting nothing out of it on the other end, right?
No, that's a great point. They don't know for sure. This is a gamble. And the stakes are so unbelievably monstrous.
Yeah.
Desperate times, I guess. Anyway, Shiana enters the room with Teg, and this deeply uncomfortable scene begins to play out as young Miles Teg is imprinted, aka sexually assaulted. It's a horrific chapter, and we hate it. Now, Teg, basically like right after the imprinting begins to have its effect on him and he awakens, is like thrashing. Shiana steps back, and it's clear something of the old Bashar is immediately present in the young body. He moves faster than anyone can see.
Yeah. Any of the highly trained people watching can see.
Duncan's been having sex with a woman for 10 years who moves faster than almost any other humans can. And even he's like, holy fuck, that child is fast. Wow. What just happened?
Right.
So this is faster even than Murbella, faster than the Honored Matre. This is the speed that we saw in Heretics, and this 9-year-old body has it immediately.
Yeah.
And this is our sign physically that the old Bashar is back.
Correct. Yep.
They have done it. Miles Teg has returned. Now, his memories return as he kind of gets his bearings, and we immediately see how fucking unbelievably powerful this guy's mind is.
Yeah.
Because, like, recall Duncan took days of, like, fleeing, and he's, like, assessing memories, and he's kind of... Teg is immediately in charge. He's, like, throwing these, like, really mean jabs at O'Drade, going, you fucking did that to me? That's crazy. I liked this a lot. He immediately forgives Duncan. You know, Duncan goes, yeah, it was my plan to do this to you.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember when you awakened my memories in that fucking Harkonnen no globe. And Teg's like, fair. Hey, actually, you know what? We're even.
We're even?
We're even. Now, Teg's jabs at O'Drade are strategic. He's pointing her thoughts in certain directions. Again, he's immediately kind of a teacher to O'Drade, reminding her of Bene Gesserit weaknesses and what's necessary for their survival. Quote, O'Drade remained silent, her thoughts moving where Teg had sent them. There was a hard shell Reverend Mothers put around themselves, against which all things from outside, including emotions, played like projections. Murbella was right, and the sisterhood had to relearn emotions. If they were only observers, they were doomed. End quote. Good Lord. What a great thesis summary of what we've been talking about.
Right.
Just this whole book club series. Like the idea of Bene Gesserit have almost done what the Tyrant did, removing themselves from humanity, looking at it from the outside, but without actually participating in it. Enjoying love, enjoying music, enjoying art, enjoying a good recipe with some garlic and beans sometimes. Maybe that's what it takes to also be able to save humanity, is to be from within it. Now, Teg does kind of play a game with them. He goes, I might not actually go along with your plans. And they're like, what? Like, oh no, he's rebelling, kill him. But he says, no. I'm still loyal to the sisterhood. I'm just saying, as a strategist, I reserve right to decide on a different strategy if it's right. And I need time with Duncan. We're going to discuss. He's going to give me all the data I need. Mentat to Mentat. We're going to figure this out. We're going to plot out our strategy to the Honored Matres. I need some time.
Right.
Now, the chapter ends as Teg shares an experience he once had, talking to Duncan alone once everybody's departed. Now, they are being observed by comm eyes, and the whole time Duncan's going, wow, you're saying a lot of shit, with the Bene Gesserit listening in.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the secrecy,
Yeah.
And he talks about this mentat rabbit hole, this thing that every mentat tries at least once, which is called a name chain. He talks about being lost in this subconscious place called the Hall of Mirrors, unable to identify a version of his self-identity to latch onto. You go, I am Miles Tegg, I am the Bashar. But what is that? Like, what is Bashar was just a thing given to me. And then before that I was Miles, but before that I was Sweetie from my mom before she chose a name. And then what was I?
Right.
That like nameless core self who existed before outside influence.
Yeah.
What is that? And in that hall of mirrors, sometimes you feel there is nothing.
Right.
There's just void. And you go, oh my God. By the way, as a Buddhist, I'm like, yeah, this is my shit. Bars. This is great. And Duncan is fascinated. He knows, of course, from his training as a mentat, he knows about this thing. And in fact, even makes offhanded reference to the dangers of it. Something that every mentat is warned about. Don't go to that place.
Right. You'll never come back.
Yeah. And Tegg shares how he got out of that perilous experience that most people have never gotten out of. And he said, well, I saw my mother.
Oh.
I saw an identity of my mother who took my hand and guided me out of that space.
Wow.
So Duncan goes, do you have other memory? And Tegg responds, and again, this is where I find that Frank is really taking the opportunity to dispel some of the like supposed magic of this universe. Because Tegg's response is, quote, no, except what anyone has in emergencies. The Hall of Mirrors was an emergency, and it also led me to see and feel the source of help. End quote.
Right.
He's saying this isn't some special ability. Everyone has this. In a crazy enough emergency, this is something that is accessible to anyone.
Yeah.
And again, I love that.
I like that too. That stood out to me.
Now, the purpose of Tegg sharing all of this openly and on the record, quote, I figured it was time we introduced ourselves fully to the Bene Gesserit. Tegg said, they should know how far they can trust us. There's work to do, and we've wasted enough time on stupidities. End quote.
I love Miles Tegg. Oh my gosh.
What a fucking great character.
Yeah.
I'll wrap up this chapter by saying, as much as Frank takes every other page to warn us about falling in the, into the hands of a charismatic leader, God damn, he's good at writing charismatic leaders.
Yeah.
Like
Tegg.
I would follow Tegg, 9-year-old or 200-year-old without question. Just any day. And I feel like that goes against Frank's warnings. I'm like, 9-year-old Miles Tegg for president. I don't give a shit, dude.
Absolutely. If Tegg is in charge, I'm absolutely enlisting. I'm ready. Because honestly, you're not going to fight most of the time.
Yeah, that's the thing. Oh my God. He's not just pulling triggers out here. He's talking. He's figuring it out.
He's a diplomatic soldier.
Oh, love him.
Okay, let's wrap up our summary. One more chapter to go here. In chapter 33, O'Trade, like much of this book, is having a terrible, horrible, no good, bad day. And the chapter actually opens on what I thought was actually a rare moment of levity in this book. This almost joking scene between O'Drade and Belando where they're arguing over O'Drade wanting to create a gazebo over there across that hill in that orchard. Make it happen, Belanda. Yeah. And Belanda's like, what the fuck are you talking about? We're at war. This is wartime.
I need a war gazebo. It's going to be beautiful.
And both of them know this is a pointless argument, but it seems like this is a way for these two Reverend Mothers to vent some feelings and maybe even talk about something that is not the death of all the Bene Gesserit and all of humanity and the destruction of everything they know. That's at least how I read it. I thought it was actually quite funny and cute.
Yeah, they have their coping mechanisms involve very low stake arguing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is, we all do that. Everyone's done a little bit of poking the bear at the office just to let off some steam.
I imagine just a silence in the office, and then O'Drade goes, Belanda, chocolate or vanilla? And she's like, vanilla. And she's like, I knew you would fucking say that, you idiot. Chocolate's the best.
Yep. That's how I read this. Now, their argument and the discussion inevitably turns from Gazebo to Honored Matre anyway, because
Always.
Of course that's on everybody's mind.
Yeah.
That gets interrupted when an acolyte runs up with breaking news.
Oh my God, what?
The Touge is here.
Oh my God, celebrity.
Back from Junction, back from the clutches of the Honored Matres.
Holy shit.
And this kicks everyone into high gear. Odrade whisks away to attend Dortugela, who, by the way, is looking rough.
Oof, I know.
She did not have a great time on Junction. The Honored Matres, we learn, tortured her. They conducted experiments on her, and they killed her 3 fellow Reverend Mothers that also went to Junction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Basically trying to use those deaths against Dortugela. And the Touge was like, they already airdropped me all their memories. Like, you can kill them. I don't care. It's horrific.
Yeah.
But I got their memories. They're safe.
God, her line where she's like, seems like an inefficient way to make fertilizer. It's like
absolutely savage. Yeah.
Incredible. Again, we see that the entire Honored Matre psyche is unable to comprehend the idea of other memory. So they're going, well, surely if we threaten to kill this person, you're going to do what we want.
Yeah.
And she's like, death is not exactly the same for me as it is for you.
Yeah, death is totally different for a Bene Gesserit sister. I also really liked the throwaway line in between all of this, where Tamerlane was the one who asked if the dead Reverend Mother's memories were downloaded, because she is nearing the end of her own life. So she would be preoccupied with what's next and whether I will be remembered and whether my memories will be downloaded. I found that like a really touching throwaway line in here.
Yeah, that's great.
So the Touge, from this gamble, has learned a couple of very important things for the war effort. She reveals that the Futars are capable of this like paralyzing screech that kind of has like a little sprinkling of the voice in it that freezes Honored Matres in their tracks.
Yeah.
Quote, I have never heard such a sound. Chilling. Every Honored Matre in that room froze, and I swear to you, they were terrified. End quote.
Crazy.
Whoa!
Also, awakened Reverend Mother with like millions of lives and memories going, I've never heard a sound like that. And you're like, never.
What could that sound be? Right.
Like 11,000 BCE, there weren't any critters on the planet that sounded like that? Nothing. Never. That's insane. A new experience for a Reverend Mother is pretty shocking.
It is, yeah.
But I also love this detail because for me, it kind of quietly filled in a lot of world building around the Honored Matre. Like, I think, and again, this is a little bit like tinfoil hat, Leo speculation time, but ultimately, like, okay, imagine you are being hunted by Futars, these creatures that eat human and can screech. And I think they are like a human hybrid, but Dortugela is like, no, they're not human.
By the Bene Gesserit yardstick, they are not human.
Yes.
Presumably, they would not pass a Gamjabar test or something.
No, probably not. But being hunted by a creature like that could freeze you with a voice like screech would make sense. Why then the Honored Matre have like it dumped all of their points, all of their like ability points into speed?
Yeah.
Because it's like, yeah, the sooner you can kill something, the sooner you can kick it in its throat, the faster you can be safe from its screech attack. Plus, they have this like built-in kind of subconscious reflex to kill the voice, right?
Yeah.
Like we've seen that where the Bene Gesserit try the voice on the Honored Matre, they get killed. And even the Honored Matre are like, whoa, I didn't mean to kill you just then. That's weird.
Right.
And it's because of the relationship of the voice to this paralyzing screech. I'm like, I love that. I mean, it's
That's
such
fun.
This was not something that Frank was focusing on. I did not remember this at all.
Me neither.
About Futars or about that relationship. But suddenly it makes sense. You're a hunted population of warrior women. Of course, you're dumping all of your points into agility, and the ones who've survived are the ones that kill people who try to use the voice on them.
Yeah.
We have some answers to questions I didn't even think to ask.
Yeah.
And it just passes in a moment. It's great.
It's great world building for sure.
Yeah.
So returning to our chapter summary, after the Touche gives her report to Odrade kicks into high gear. She's suddenly making decisions and plans are underway, folks. It's go time. She orders the Touche to rest and recover. You've done your duty. You've really pushed yourself to the limit, and you've earned some rest. And once you're rested up, I need you sitting in on all of my councils.
Yeah.
Because you have direct interaction with the Spider Queen. You are now acting special counsel on all of our military plans against the Honored Matres.
She's been to Junction. She's been in the lair of the enemy where they're going to have to go.
So that'll be the Touche's role going forward.
Yeah.
Odrade then summons Teg into the room. And together with Tamerlane and Belanda and Streggy standing nearby, they begin to discuss war plans. What are we going to do now that we have this information? Teg, the military genius, suggests avoiding outright war, which is classic Teg, and instead feinting at Gamu before striking directly at Junction, where the Honored Matres are home-based. But in order for that plan to work out, he says that they're going to need first-hand reporting from the planet's surface. They're going to need that critical intel for this military operation to be successful.
Right.
The cost of this maneuver shocks the room. That's wild. We're just going to directly attack them. But Teg makes it clear that he understands the stakes. He's not proposing this just to be dramatic.
Right. Yeah.
Quote, losing everything is more costly, end quote.
Yeah.
That's his argument.
He's doing cost analysis. He's like, we do nothing or we do something, less bold, we'll lose everything.
Yeah.
So we have to be bold. We have to do something like this. And that's apparently the conclusion that he and Duncan have come to. Although I also love him going, do I have to tell you all the plans now? And Odrade's like, of course not. And he's like, sweet. Because I might need to surprise everyone.
It's amazing. The nature of surprise is that I don't even tell you, everybody needs to react to my surprise so that I can orchestrate it perfectly. It's brilliant stuff. Miles Teg, the GOAT.
Meanwhile, maybe also Frank got to writing this chapter and he was like, oh, what is the plan? Oh, fuck. All right. Teg says, I'm not going to tell you yet. I'll come up with that later, said Frank. I mean, Teg said that.
That's right. Procrastinating the plan for sure. Now, an interesting note during all of this military planning, Teg is not revealing the fact that he can still see no ships.
Yeah.
In addition to his super speed flash abilities, he has also retained in this Gola reawakening his ability to see no ships, which is an absolute game changer.
Insane.
But for whatever reason, he feels it's too early to reveal this to Odrade and the Sisterhood. He's keeping this one close to the chest.
I think he rightly guesses. Because recall, at the beginning of this book, and maybe even the beginning of Heretics, that is the Holy Grail.
It is.
That is the goose that laid the golden egg. Everybody wants a way to nullify no ships, because if you have that, you win. You just win.
Right.
You have the skeleton key that opens any door. So I think he is guessing correctly. If he says, hey, I have this ability, he's done. They are going to lock him down and they're going to take his genetics and they're going to make 1,000 clones of him.
Yeah.
And that they're going to just say, put a tag on every ship and that's what we're going to do.
This is our new war strategy now.
This is everything. And I think he rightly is guessing, if I show them that I have this ability, they are going to get in the way of what I'm actually going to propose, which is going to be the best method, period. And I don't get the impression that he is going to throw away this new life that he has, but still it's if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. And if that's what it takes to save humanity, he can't have the Bene Gesserit going, no, you can't do that because we need your abilities.
I think that's a spot on read of it. I think you're absolutely right. He's not holding this back for any nefarious reasons. In fact, he's trying to protect the Bene Gesserit from itself. This will be too distracting. You will all stop paying attention to what I'm saying and then become fixated on the no ship thing. And he recognizes that this card is best played close to the chest and activated when the time is right. Okay, let's wrap up this chapter in this summary section. Chapter 33 ends as Belanda spells out the most daring part of this maneuver. Odrade herself is going to be on Junction and will be acting as Teg's spy.
Right.
She will be the one transmitting that all-important intel from the surface of the planet itself.
Yeah.
Now, shortly before everybody leaves to handle their various assignments, Teg references the writing above the gates of hell in Dante's Inferno. He says, quote, "Abandon all sanity, ye who enter here," end quote. Odrade obviously clocks this reference immediately, and she asks if he is referring to the lunacy that wartime amplifies.
Right.
And Miles Teg plays coy. Quote, "What else? Surely you didn't think I referred to your sisterhood." End quote. You,
oh, you, Teg, you trickster, you. And Odrade's like, I mean, Duncan plays that game all the time. Are you fucking with me?
I just love that this 9-year-old Teg is fucking with his daughter.
Yeah.
But clearly, as we've said many times in our coverage of Heretics and this book, Miles Teg is perhaps the only person, non-Bene Gesserit, in the whole universe that can tap dance with the best of the best Bene Gesserit out there.
Yeah.
And even outwit them at times.
Yeah.
And he continues to show that ability here in his interactions with Belanda, Tamerlane, Stragi, Odrade.
Yeah.
So that's where we end today's reading. The clock is ticking, folks. We have less than 100 standard days to prepare for this fateful encounter with the Spider Queen and the Honored Matres on Junction.
I mean, knowing the way Frank handles time, that could be the next chapter, or it could be 6 chapters from now. Maybe we'll get 6 chapters of just office talk, Zoom meetings about meetings. Should we have another meeting tomorrow? Let's put a 1-to-1 on the calendar tomorrow, and the week drags by.
You know, Belanda is salivating at the thought of putting meetings on calendars this week.
She's like, yeah, so I just sent an invite to all of you for the next 35 days, 6 meetings a day.
Brutal.
Well, that is our summaries taken care of. We have a takeaway to talk about, but before we do, we're going to take a quick break. So don't go anywhere, dear listener. When we're back, we're talking about the ethics of using children.
Welcome back, folks.
Yeah.
Let's now get into our takeaway for today. And there was a moment where we considered other takeaways for today's episode, but ultimately, I think it's important for us to, frankly, address the elephant in the room and talk about that chapter where young Miles Teg is awakened.
Yes.
That incredibly upsetting scene and moment of assault against a child. So before we get into it, let's lay some groundwork and then we'll unpack it further.
Yeah.
To be clear, this scene has been telegraphed somewhat.
Yeah.
For most of the book, it has come up in conversations. It has been hinted at by Shiana, by Marbella, by Duncan. Odrade has considered it as well. So it doesn't come as a total shock, I think, but that doesn't make it any less of a shocking scene in and of itself.
Yeah.
And we're not going to dwell on the nitty-gritty details. We're not going to read any passages from this scene because we don't want to reopen any wounds for anyone that's listening.
Right.
We're going to talk about it, but we're not going to actually read the words.
Yeah, we thought about doing like a trigger warning, kind of real, kind of explicit conversation about this, but ultimately I don't think that's necessary. I think we can talk about the scene without necessarily getting into those details.
Right.
And along those lines, don't worry if you are concerned that, you know, we're going to be kind of very gently discussing the worst parts of this chapter.
Yeah. But all of that being said, we did ultimately decide to make this the takeaway today because it is a really monstrous moment in this book and in this story and in this series. And I think it's worth dwelling on the what, whens, and whys of it all and sharing our own thoughts on it as well.
It's also, I think, as it will be clear when we're done talking about this is probably one of the few moments in all of Frank's books that you and I both agree probably should be different than it is.
Right.
And I think we'll be kind of making that case today a little bit, although that's also not exactly the purpose of this discussion. But in any case, to talk about the scene without necessarily talking too much about the scene, in its defense, the scene is meant to be disgusting, uncomfortable, shocking.
Yep.
And very much like that is clearly Frank's intention, is to like really upset us.
Yeah.
Every character is uncomfortable.
Right.
You know, Marbella, an honored matre who that that they're doing all sorts of shit, right? Like having sex with animals,
This is kind of their MO.
Kind of their MO. And she's like, damn, you Bene Gesserit are fucking crazy. Yeah. Like she's taken aback. She's like,
she is.
Oh, you're really doing it. Oh, I kind of thought that was just a bluff, but no. Okay, sure enough. And even Odrade, the Mother Superior herself, the one who's calling the shots. Yes, this was Duncan's idea, but she's the one who's orchestrating this, deciding let's do it while Mirbella's indisposed. Let's do this while Duncan's partially distracted. We don't want him interfering. All of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
We get this little moment. Quote, "Dear me," she thought, "are we nothing but voyeurs?" Such thoughts were necessary at this moment, but she felt them demean her. She lost something in that intrusion. Extremely non-Bene Gesserit thinking, but very human. End quote. Again, her internal dialogue highlighting how Bene Gesserit is opposed to humanity.
Right.
Bene Gesserit is not human. It's calculated. It's cold. It's ultimately calculated. And so much so that it is a detriment, I think.
Yeah.
Now, Frank, in this moment, is making the decision as the writer, for better or for worse, and this is probably for worse, to cut the bullshit. He is no longer dancing around things subtly. He is not being subtle in this scene. And that's part of what makes it so shocking. Gone are some of the euphemistic terms, and we get some like details, which is awful. And he's showing us the lengths to which the sisterhood will go.
Yeah.
He's showing us the realities of the sisterhood's choices. And really, again, I'm sort of his cheerleader in this sense, where he makes us feel the discomfort of being bored in a book.
Yeah.
Here he makes us feel uncomfortable with the text.
Right.
He is forcing us as the readers to sit in that discomfort and in that disgust, where we viscerally go, I don't want this to be happening. I don't like this.
Yeah. We've spent so many episodes talking about the Bene Gesserit's icky eugenics and their manipulation of politics and the difficult choices they've had to make. And that's all well and good, right? Like you can talk about that intellectually from a distance, but here Frank makes the choice to show it.
Yeah.
This is what you're talking about. These are the quote unquote difficult decisions the Bene Gesserit have made for humanity over the many millennia that they've been manipulating humanity.
Yeah.
And it really challenges the reader. If you have ever championed the Bene Gesserit,
yeah,
dear reader, you have championed moments like this as well.
I mean, again, from the characters, we get that this is really a particularly terrible moment, but it's still a moment they're doing.
Yeah.
It's still something they're deciding to do when push comes to shove. And we hear some of the excuses that the Bene Gesserit are able to pull out at moments like this. The things they're telling themselves, the narratives they're building in order to commit atrocities. Quote, "The Bashar was not a child." End quote. Is a flimsy ass excuse to do the thing they're doing.
Yeah.
And again, it's like, I guess in like a fully utilitarian way where the person who has to live with the trauma is the person who, and that all, that's why like anything done to children is so awful, because they just don't have any tools. They don't have any ways to cope. They don't have any, they don't have perspective. They don't like, something happens to me. I've got 35 years of like life experience to help soften things. And yet the fact that he will be an awakened Bashar doesn't change what you're doing.
Right.
It's really, it's not a good excuse.
Yeah.
And it's one that really just shows the sort of like half-assed attempts that leadership is doing to justify this moment.
Right. And you're really banking on the Bashar's loyalty to the sisterhood, that he will forgive you for doing this at all, right?
True.
Because it's not like this will happen, that the imprinting will happen, and then a switch will flip in his mind and he will suddenly become the Bashar and not remember being the child.
Right. True.
Golas don't forget being a Gola once they're awakened. So he will remember this entire experience. He will just remember it through the lens of a more mature adult Miles Tegg.
Yeah, that's a great point.
But that doesn't erase that this happened to him.
The fear, the trauma, all of the moment is going to live as a real memory.
As a real memory, as a real experience for him, no matter what. And you're just hoping that once you're on the other side of it, that the mature Bashar will go, damn, that was fucked up, but I get why you had to do it.
Right.
And that is effectively how he responds. So the gamble works out for O'Drade and the Bene Gesserit at this point, but there was a very real chance where it does not. And all you've done is traumatize a child.
Yeah. And then you've thrown away so much.
Yeah.
This is also not a situation in which you can just grow another Gola and try again and go back to the classic way. It's like you're really banking everything on this.
Yeah. And, this, I think, makes me at least reevaluate my relationship and thoughts on the sisterhood. We have discussed for 2 whole books now what the sisterhood's place in this universe is, right? We've asked some big questions. Are they the villains of the Dune universe? Wait a second. Are they the heroes? Are they maybe just a necessary evil that we all have to put up with? Wait, don't they claim to be the enlightened curators of humanity? Farming humanity for a better crop in the future?
Right.
We've had all of those discussions about the sisterhood thus far, discussions that clearly Frank Herbert intends for the reader to have. And I think this is a scene that should give us all pause. And certainly I think Frank's intention is for it to give the reader pause, to force the reader to reconsider everything that we know about the sisterhood or that we've been told about the sisterhood. This assault is part of the Bene Gesserit. It is part of the fabric that makes the sisterhood who they are. It is at their core. And so that for me begs the question, is the core rotten? An idea that's been tossed around ever since Heretics of Dune. Is the core of the Bene Gesserit rotten? And does it need to be thrown out and reshaped entirely?
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, I think this is a moment where we can pause and maybe share our feelings on it. But does this scene, Leo, dramatically change your feelings about the sisterhood, or does this still feel in line with everything you know about the sisterhood?
So what I would say is, based on the reactions that all of the members of the sisterhood are having, even with their perfect memory of everything the sisterhood has done, this is ranking pretty high on the list of atrocities that they've committed. So if I'm sharing my perspective on the sisterhood as a whole, going back to Old Terra and the long history of the sisterhood, I don't know that that has changed as much. Because again, we are not learning in this moment, oh yeah, we do this every week. This is like, and we've been doing this every week forever. But, and this is a big old but, fuck this sisterhood.
Yeah.
Like, I think at this point, Frank is showing, like saying, yeah, you know that they've done questionable shit over the years. And yet, I really need to show you how far they'll go.
Yeah.
And look at how far they've gone. Also, Frank spent the last book and a half writing O'Drade, this character that we, time and time again, will be like, she's the best. We love her. She's great. O'Drade is such a fun character. I love O'Drade. And Frank's like, I think you're falling into the charismatic leader trope again. Because look, she will be the one spearheading this thing.
Yeah.
Like Frank, the one who's ultimately cynical about charismatic leaders, is again teaching us that lesson. Do I think he needs to? Do I think this is a necessary part of this story? I don't know. Again, we'll talk about that more broadly in a bit. But I think Frank is reminding us that thinking that she is the GOAT, the greatest of all time, does not mean that she's not capable of heinous, vile shit.
Yeah.
And to be fair to O'Drade, which is, again, with a giant asterisk, because I don't think this should have happened, I think she sees this, awakening the great Bashar Miles Teg, as the only viable survival of the Bene Gesserit, which, in her assessment of the way that the Honored Matre are conquering the Old Imperium, this short-sighted, violent method, I think she sees the survival of the Bene Gesserit and the sisterhood and this part of the Imperium as nothing less than the survival of all of humanity.
Yeah.
So the question of like, okay, well, I got to be the one to pull the trigger, so I'm going to pull the trigger. And that damns me, and it damns the order of the Bene Gesserit, but maybe that is the ticket that saves humanity. And I kind of get the impression that's where her head is at.
Yeah.
that doesn't make it any better. And again, I think that this is an indictment of where the sisterhood has fallen.
Right.
Yes, they are doing something really especially monstrous, but this is in line with shit they've been doing for years. Yes. It's kind of the same thing where we talk about them going, ew, they've been enslaving people with sex. And you go, like you're any fucking better, Bene Gesserit. Like, just because it's not that crude doesn't mean your like servants and peons are any more free.
Yeah.
So I think that this is intended to really spoil our opinion of what the Bene Gesserit order is at this moment. I think it succeeds. And I don't know that changes how I feel about the Bene Gesserit 3,000 years ago, but like today, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The order it needs to be reinvented. And I think that O'Drade knows that, and she's saying the same thing, but that doesn't make it any easier.
Yeah.
What about you? Do you still very team Bene? Should we go back to our Are They Guilty episode and re-record that whole thing?
Right. No, I think you actually put that really beautifully and eloquently. So I'll just second what you said. I completely agree. And I think what's interesting here is that in order to make this type of decision, you need to have enough distance from humanity, which is a thing we've talked about so much, a thing that O'Drade recognizes. In order to be able to say, we need to do this because it just is what it is, let's get it over with, means you're shutting off a part of your humanity to be able to justify that. And the Bene Gesserit, at this point in their history, have distanced themselves so much. And their superpower, other memory, in fact, becomes a crutch. It's that Dr. Manhattan problem from Watchmen, right? You become so distanced from humanity that you forget what it means to be human and you lose that connection. You get this like 30,000 foot view of everything.
Right.
And you forget what it feels like to be on the ground actually and living and experiencing it and being human.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the 30,000 foot view might have you go, well, we're in a life and death situation here. The Bashar's our only way out. This is what we got to do. And someone on the ground might argue, he's a kid. Surely we can come up with something else. And if we can't, then maybe we just accept our fate.
Right.
From this point forward in the book, it's going to be very difficult for me to like stomach what any of these characters say and what their justifications and motivations are, because I know they've made this decision at this point. And what's kind of even more disgusting is like, oh, well, it's successful, so we were actually justified in our opinion. It worked out.
Right. It's almost immediately the ends are sort of supposed to justify those means.
Right.
Because we just get now war council time. How do we get out of this fucking, I'm on this rope with the axe wielding psycho behind me.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa. You're moving on pretty quick from the worst thing we've ever read.
Right.
Like,
right.
You're absolutely right. It's like the tone of, well, Teg's back, so it was worth it.
Yeah. That tone feels especially icky to me. It's like not really sitting with and reconciling what you did to get Teg back and immediately moving on to war planning.
Right.
I will say the character that I'm coming out of this quite proud of is Murbella. Murbella is coming out the other side of this pretty squeaky clean. She has been very vocal in being against this, despite being an honored matre, despite herself having used sexual abilities to subjugate men. She's never done it to a child, presumably. She's disgusted by that idea. And ultimately, I think this perhaps is part of the point of this scene as well. We are supposed to be endeared to Murbella, to recognize that Murbella is maybe the shape of things going forward, that goal that we should be reaching for, holding on to love, holding on to humanity, while still utilizing Bene Gesserit planning and long-term thinking.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. So here's where we can pivot a little bit.
Yeah.
The question then comes, did this need to happen? Did we need to have this scene in order to get to that point and that perspective? Like, did Frank achieve what he set out to do as a writer and a storyteller? And of course, we don't know what his intentions were as a writer.
We can't ask him.
But point is, like, I think when you start reading Dune and you go into online communities and you see the conversations that are happening about Frank's 6 books, this scene is often brought up.
Yeah.
And it's a spectrum, right? Some people claim this is Frank indulging in his sexual fantasies and weird inclinations, to others simply being like, yo, this was very uncomfortable, but it was intentional and needed because, again, you could get to the chapter just before this and then pick up the chapter after this and be very Team Bene Gesserit, and you need to not be.
Yeah.
And that's why this scene is necessary. That's the spectrum. We get people saying this is Frank being horny and problematic, and then you get people saying, that's the full spectrum. And I think it's appropriate that we share our thoughts on this as like huge Dune fans and as fans of Frank, and generally as people who try to be pretty fair and balanced when we talk about Frank and not putting him on a pedestal and as much as we can. Although I definitely do end up doing that sometimes. So we are just sharing our opinions on this, but you might be wondering where we fall. And ultimately, I think as we get into talking about our opinions, it is worth noting, if you out there in listener land have a different opinion, I think that's totally fair. I don't think there's any clean answer to this. Again, the world of art and the world of storytelling and the world of fiction is not one of clear and clean boundaries of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable.
Yeah.
And sometimes the entire art form is made stronger by people pushing limits. So at the end of the day, if you don't agree with us, that's totally fine. We don't necessarily fully agree either.
Yeah.
With that out of the way, Abu, do you think this scene was necessary? If you were editor-in-chief, do you leave this chapter in?
No, absolutely not. I don't think this scene was necessary whatsoever. And in fact, I think Frank Herbert really fumbled the ball here, not just from a moral and ethical perspective, but also from a narrative one. And I think as a writer, that's not a good look. This whole scene, in fact, to me, reads as pure shock value.
Sure.
Rather than thoughtful, impactful storytelling. I think making the choice to resort to child sexual abuse to make your narrative point is lazy writing. And to me, reads as being edgy for the sake of being edgy.
Yeah.
What's the worst thing I can think of to make the reader hate the Bene Gesserit?
Yeah.
That's what I'll do.
Yeah.
And let's say, for example, as Frank's editor, I'm like, okay, man, you're really committing to this thing. You really want this scene in here. You think it'll be super impactful and important.
Yeah.
Great.
Sure.
Then let's work to set it up properly, to give it the proper narrative weight so that the reader is not left confused and disgusted and wanting to put the book down and never finish it.
Yeah, which were some people shared. They were like, I stopped reading at that point. And it's like, fuck, man, you 5.5 books and you lost someone?
Yeah.
Is it worth it?
It's a tough look because I do think Frank failed to do that. He did not give this moment the justice it deserved, narratively speaking. If he was committed to doing it, he needed to set it up more. I would have liked, for example, a scene of Odrade and Shiana talking about it. Their conversation apparently happened completely off page. We get that in a throwaway thought from Odrade.
Yeah.
We also never get a Duncan and Shiana scheming about this. We never hear their debates or their internal justifications for why they'd want to do it. And so as the reader, I'm left going, why the fuck did Duncan choose to do this?
Yeah. Considering how like racked with guilt he seems throughout this chapter, it's like, but you were the one who pulled that trigger in some ways.
Right.
Why would you do that? And we don't get that answer.
You're absolutely right. And I think Shiana is another piece of the puzzle for me too. Shiana is about as anti-Bene Gesserit as Reverend Mothers go. Why is she going along with this? What is the end goal for Shiana here? I'm utterly confused why she would be complicit in this.
Yeah.
And nothing in the book has hinted at what Shiana's motivations here might be, outside of she's scheming with Duncan, which is extremely vague and not enough justification for a scene like this.
It kind of makes her an accessory to his plan. Whatever his plan is, which again, we don't even get that much of like, why this and not the traditional way? And he goes, oh, the traditional way is so bad. And you go,
yeah,
okay. Oh, okay. Because this is better, I guess.
Right.
And then Shiana just is there too, but like she doesn't have agency, or we don't see her agency in making that decision.
Yeah. And I think, this is neither here nor there. This is not super relevant to the scene, but I think Shiana as a whole gets super sidelined in this book for how important and critical Shiana is in Heretics, for how much we build up her character and her ability to control the worms and everything. She is like not even a B-list character in this story. Suddenly she's like relegated to the background for most of it, and maybe she'll come into play in the war planning, but that really seems to be where Miles and O'Drate are going to shine, and it doesn't seem like Shiana has much left to do in this book.
Yeah, she's like, so I'm going to be on a pedestal as a new head of a galactic religion. And O'Drate's like, hey, eventually. Now you're on the council, though. You're just an employee.
Can you schedule my dentist appointment for me next week? Thanks.
Yeah, she's been downgraded for sure.
I think this book is a tough look for Shiana in general, but I think especially in the context of her being complicit in this horrible act, it's an extremely tough look. And I think Frank utterly dropped the ball there. We also, in addition to that, are told in this very chapter where the imprinting takes place that Duncan and Marbella, quote unquote, had a fight about this once or something. And again, all of that completely off page. We don't actually experience the fight between Duncan and Marbella, but we do get like a long ass chapter about like a nightmare she had or something,
Right.
I think there are moments in this book that could be trimmed down and these things could be added in to build up to a horrifying scene like this, to narratively justify it further, which I think Frank failed to do. And all of these like throwaway lines about we had an argument and O'Drate and Shiana talked about it, don't worry, it happened off page. That to me feels like tacked on afterthoughts rather than careful, meticulous plotting to build up to an emotionally and narratively impactful scene. And so then the scene falls flat and ends up reading as nothing more than pure shock value.
Yeah.
Oh my God, look how awful. They're assaulting a child. Isn't it crazy?
Yeah.
That's not how you want this scene to land. And for me, at least, that's how it lands.
Yeah.
And, I've said it once, I'll say it 1,000 more times. I really think Frank Herbert needed a much stronger editor in these last couple of books who pushed back on some of his more out there ideas and forced him to go back and polish and rework some of the clunky narrative and creative choices he made in these books. I think this is really Frank Herbert unshackled and unleashed, and he's at this point in his career very famous and probably able to write whatever the fuck he wants and get it published. And I'm someone who strongly believes that editing is where the magic happens. And I just feel like Frank needed more pushback.
Yeah.
I also want to just acknowledge that there is a somewhat uncomfortable pattern throughout the Dune series of sexually charged scenes that involve minors, that involve either children or teens. Lest we forget, in Heretics of Dune, when Duncan is subjugated and then reverse subjugates Marbella, he is literally a teenager at that point. That was over 10 years ago. And then all the way back in Children of Dune, we joke about beef swelling. It's a bit of a meme in the Dune fandom, but to be clear, that is a term we got in the context of a 9-year-old child, presumably getting their first erection or something. So again, that pattern reads as weird to me.
Sure.
And I am not making, to be clear, I'm not making any ridiculous claims that Frank was some sort of like pedophile or something. But I also find myself unable to ignore that pattern, and it makes me question some of the choices that Frank makes in his stories. And ultimately, what's kind of a bummer as a huge Dune fan is that these choices detract from my enjoyment from the stories.
Yeah, we see those moments levied so much against him. And like no one wants to be the one defending beef swelling. No one wakes up in the morning and goes, you know what I really want to stand for today? You know what creative decision I believe in?
Yeah.
And yet that ends up being the case, because it's like these books have so many good points and so many interesting critiques of society and religious institution, all these things.
Absolutely.
And yet, as huge fans of the franchise and as prominent voices in this space, it is something that we find ourselves bumping up against often, and it sucks.
Yeah.
Historically I've been very team like bold art is good art. Like I do think that like if you are out there, you know, creating an artwork that's going to really make people uncomfortable in some way, make them question their assumptions about themselves and society, and like, yeah, that's generally good. I do have a hard time justifying this scene being in this book for the following reasons. I think the boxes that this scene checks were already checked. And I think that there are other ways to check the box of, no, we really need you to understand how fucking awful the Bene Gesserit is without necessarily going here. There are just other ways to do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth reiterating the point that I absolutely reject. There's this narrative online, and we've mentioned it today, the idea that like books that contain sex and sexuality are inherently like horny or sexual or like pornography or whatever. You know, people talk about Frank got horny in his old age and blah, blah, blah. And I think that's such bullshit. These books do contain a lot of sex, but again, it is clinical. Even the chapter where Marbella and Duncan are imprinting one another, the discussions of them having sex over and over again in the shower, none of it is written in this tantalizing, smutty way. It's all very clinical in a way that like is just neutral and or sometimes a little uncomfortable, but at the end of the day, like,
yeah,
just kind of is. And I do think that it is clear, to me at least, that Frank did not write this scene to glorify or relish that horrible act.
No. Yeah.
I don't think he was writing this from the perspective of, ooh, this is my little fantasy and I'm just putting this. No, I think it is clear he is saying this is the most monstrous thing that could happen.
Right.
And I'm going to describe it enough to make you feel the monstrousness. And I think that's where this is fucked up. Because listen, last book, we saw the Marbella Duncan scene. Duncan's a teenager of some years, but it's clear that he's a little younger than should be having this act with Marbella. And enough so that like even his Bene Gesserit teachers, when he was a younger Gola, were going, oh, it's too early for him to like meet Lucilla.
Right.
You know?
Right. It was too early. Yeah.
And so the fact that like this is serving exactly the same in-universe role, this moment of awakening Teg is accomplishing the same goal from like a functional standpoint. They need his awakened memories. I'm left scratching my head at why Frank would make the scene more awful by making the victim younger and also giving us more details as the writer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I think you're right that it's shock value. It feels like that, you know, I think when we look back on his interviews, even that like problematic UCLA one in the 80s, I think he enjoyed the sort of like, well, I'm just an intellectual having hard conversations. And if you're uncomfortable, that's you being uncomfortable with your own shit.
Right. That's
a you problem. Get on my level and be an intellectual and be blah, blah, blah. I kind of get that impression from him sometimes, from the work we've done researching him as a person.
Yeah. And
so I can see that being present here of like, I know that this is going to be divisive, but if you disagree with it, you're not on my level intellectually, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I heavily agree that a good editor, and again, I'm sure this book was edited by someone.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
But I think toning this down or even removing it altogether and changing the circumstances would be better. I think Frank, in the Dune universe, wanted to explore sexuality as a form of energy, as a form of humanity, as violence, as control, as power, as domination. And honestly, totally fair. I'm here for that. I appreciate that train of intellectual investigation.
Yeah.
But he could have made Teg older. They could have discussed it at length and gone, and honestly, they could have even had a situation, this is kind of coming up to me now in the moment, they could have said, oh, Drade went, you know what, we're going to do that. Shiana could have been like, you know what, we're going to do that. And it could have been Duncan or it could have been Marbella even to say, fucking stop.
Right.
Look at yourselves. Look at what you've become.
Right.
We're going to do it the traditional way. We're going to convince him to kill Duncan. And then he's going to break and he's not, and it's going to be terrible and monstrous, but we're not going to go there. And there's the condemnation. They are guilty of intent to do this thing, but we're not going to go there and we don't need to do it.
Yeah.
Frank's smart. He's a smart dude. He could have figured out a way of not including this and still accomplishing his narrative and literary goals. And I don't think it's a stronger work of art for it.
Right. And I completely agree with that point, that it was a choice to write this scene and build up to this moment, right? Like you're saying, Frank is a smart guy. I'm sure he thought of a dozen other ways to narratively get to this point and to get a point across, but then he sat down and chose, these are the words I'm going to write instead. And I think that's where you and I agree that we sort of quibble with him on that.
Yeah.
The choice to do that.
And listen, again, got my degree in art. It's going great. Thanks for asking. And I think that there are artistic ends that justify genuinely shocking means. I mean, I've seen some works of art in the world, and again, nothing that involves like assaulting people, but still, this doesn't clear the bar. And that's just a bad choice on Frank's part. You know, people will say, oh, Dune is super weird and super uncomfortable. And I'll generally, broadly, be like, no, you're wrong. It's a great book series. You should listen to my podcast about it. But the reality is, if they were like, yeah, what about this scene? I'm like, you're right.
Yeah,
you're right there.
You got me on that one.
You got me on that one. 1 point you, 0 points me. So that's where I'll kind of end my thoughts. But I do want to end on a positive note. I know this conversation is kind of a heavy one. So I do want to say that I love Teg. And the return of Teg's character from the terrified, traumatized child to the Bashar is one that I think Frank handles very well. Again, would be nice if you had a couple of characters really talking about and unpacking that scene afterwards. But in light of that, I felt the room change.
Yeah.
All of these characters who are such strong personalities, you feel them fall under Teg's command, though he is in a 9-year-old body.
Right.
And I think that is really incredible. I'm glad Teg's back. What a great book, except for this one scene.
Yeah. Well, that's our takeaway today, folks. We wanted to have that tough conversation. We've never shied away from the more difficult parts of Frank Herbert's work in these stories. And today is just another moment where we felt it was important to have the tough conversation, share our honest thoughts on it, and ultimately try to have a nuanced discussion of something that's difficult to talk about. And of course, we're curious to hear what all of you think as well. And our goal is never to pass some sort of judgment or detract from how other folks may have felt about these moments. We're here just opening up the conversation and sharing two opinions of countless out there. All right, let's wrap it up there before we fall down another rabbit hole. That's our takeaway, folks. Let's take a quick breather. Don't go anywhere, though. When we come back, we do have 2 delicious spice morsels cooking in the oven. So stick around. Hope you're hungry. We'll see you in a minute.
Welcome back, everybody. Oh, I hope you enjoyed your break. Let's get into our spice morsels. And our first spice morsel today is mens sana in corpore sano. Now, in our first chapter today, in response to Mirbella's explanation about that altered training mech, quote, Odrade concealed elation. Mens sana in corpore sano. We have her at last. End quote. And of course, we here at Gom Jabbar love a random Latin reference, so we leapt into action here to bring you way too much information about this offhanded thought. Because again, this is something that went over my head. When I first read this book, I didn't know the reference, and I just went, I'll look that up at some point. Never did. So here you go. We looked it up, here to bring you the deets. The phrase, mens sana in corpore sano, goes back to the Roman poet Juvenal from the work Satire 10, which focuses on the balance between desires and the harm they can lead to when coveted and kind of prioritized over more virtuous behavior and God, actually. Now, the phrase itself is part of a list of things that are desirable in life and translates to pray for a sound mind in a healthy body. which is like, yeah, pretty good. This is from Poetry in Translation. Here is a broader sample of that section. Quote, then you might pray for a sound mind in a healthy body. Ask for a heart filled with courage without fear of death that regards long life as among the least of nature's gifts, that can endure any hardship, to which anger is unknown, that desires nothing and gives more credit to all the labors and cruel sufferings of Hercules than to all the love-making, all the feasting, all the downy pillows of Sardanapalus.
Mm-hmm.
End quote. Now, Sardanapalus was the last king of Assyria, basically dude who had it all, super lavish, just spoiled, just orgies and fucking and food and drinking and all of
the softest pillows you've ever slept on.
10 million count fibers. That cotton's fucking crazy expensive. It's all from West Elm, all of his furniture. Anyway, point is, that is the juxtaposition. It's Hercules, this guy who fights and toils for humanity, compared to the person who's just lavishing in worldly delights with no concerns or anything like that, right? It's not virtue, it's sloth, it's gluttony. So in short, sound mind and a healthy body represents the real prioritization, is over the worldly and fleeting pleasures represented by Sardanapalus, and also the honored matre, having like something you're working towards, goals, having the like toil, the fight, the grit of Hercules. That is what you should yearn for. And in this scene, Audrade makes that reference because she's happy to see that Murbella, her training, is sharpening her mind and body perfectly. Her body, she's so healthy. Her mind so focused.
Right.
Her mindset has shifted away from that kind of hedonistic pleasure seeking of the honored matre, their garlic beans recipes. And instead, she's thinking more about pushing her limits, finding a stronger tomorrow, being more capable tomorrow than she is today.
Yes.
And that mindset is exactly what Audrade was hoping for. Again, mens sana in corpore sano.
Love to be mens sana in corpore sano.
Yeah, same.
I try to be mens sana in corpore sano every day.
Every morning I look in the mirror, I'm like, mens sana in corpore sano.
All right, folks, morsel number 2. Let's talk about Lebensraum. During the War Council in chapter 33 today, Teg lets the room stew in some historic ponderings. And among these thoughts, we get this passage in particular. Quote, the forces impelling that great collective animal went back to the tribal days and beyond, as did so many forces to which humans responded without thinking. Mix the genes, expand Lebensraum for your own breeders, gather the energies of others, collect slaves, peons, servants, serfs, markets, workers. The terms often were interchangeable. End quote.
Commentary, social commentary.
Love some social commentary. The word Lebensraum there is not used accidentally by Frank Herbert, of course. Right. And Teg himself, throughout this scene, is intentionally making references to history to remind the Bene Gesserit to not rush head-on into wars, to fight against the animalistic instincts that we see have led their opponents, the honored matres, into madness. So let's break it down. This phrase, Lebensraum, carries a lot of weight. I learned a lot here from the research that you did. I did not know this phrase before today.
I did not either, and it seems particularly crazy that this one-off phrase is used in the book, and that never clocked for me.
Never clocked for me either. So get ready for a little bit of a history lesson, folks. Buckle up here. In our research from the Holocaust Encyclopedia, the term Lebensraum is German for living space.
Right.
And it was coined in 1901 by the geographer Frederick Ratzel. And the unfortunate part of Lebensraum is that this terminology was adopted by the Nazis. This is considered a critical part of the Nazi worldview that drove both the military and the racial policies for the party leading up to World War II.
Right.
This idea that we need to create more living space for the German people as we expand and grow and populate the earth.
And real
with more
Germans.
Pure Germans.
Pure Germans, as if that ever fucking exists. It's stupid.
Exactly. It's disgusting, of course, but the idea of Lebensraum was at the core of it. We need more living space. We need to expand and populate more of the world with real Germans. And to really land this point, in a slide from a Hitler Youth educational presentation that we found, the word Lebensraum is used.
Mm.
Here's the English translation of the German in that Hitler Youth presentation. Quote, growing numbers of people in Nordland were forced to look for a new habitat, end quote.
Mm.
And habitat there is the English translation of Lebensraum, basically living space, more room. For pure-blooded Germans.
Yeah.
Now, the idea evolved from being solely about overcrowding to genocide, as we know from history.
Right.
Here's a quote again from the Holocaust Encyclopedia. Quote, a biological view of Lebensraum resonated with an inaccurate historical view of the German role in the East during the ancient and medieval periods. Expansionists clung to this mythic German history in Eastern Europe, arguing that these regions were actually lost German lands. End quote.
I'm so exhausted.
That is
by like that kind of narrative of like, and it's the same fucking thing. Sorry to get political for 2 seconds, but like the Make America Great Again, it never was great for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
This idea of like the mythologized history,
yes,
justifying today's behaviors and what we envision for tomorrow is so exhausting, because why are we bringing up imagined shit in real decisions?
Yes.
Deal with the reality. What are you doing?
Yeah. And I actually, from this quote, I really like that phrase, the biological view of Lebensraum.
Yeah.
It's like, we're not just taking living space and territory now,
right?
Because we want Germany to expand and for our Nazi ideology to expand. We're also claiming historical territory that's untrue.
Right.
We're going back and rewriting history and claiming that certain lands and histories were actually German, and so all we're really doing in the present today is taking it back.
Yeah.
I find that interesting. Two uses of Lebensraum there. The literal use of we're fighting a war and taking more land, and the historical biological view of we're taking back, we're rewriting history, we're claiming old history.
Yeah. Also because like Lebensraum, the idea of like there being space for living, if you're talking about overcrowding, okay, so everyone has a house and an apartment, so everyone's good. You're good. You have it. You've accomplished it. And they go, no, this is biological Lebensraum. This is like, we need a safe environment, a safe German environment, like a biological environment. And you go, what? But there's room for what are you talking about? And they go, no, not room for us Germans. God, exhausting.
Obviously horrible, but I think also very intentional for Frank Herbert in a story where the hidden Jews are introduced.
Yeah. Oh, true. Yeah.
For him to be intentionally using a Nazi coded historical term here.
Yeah.
For Miles Tegg to make that reference.
Also Dune Messiah, Paul straight up being like, compare me to Hitler.
Right. I'm Space Hitler.
I'm Space Hitler.
So to bring it back to this particular moment of Miles Tegg making this reference to Lebensraum, I think it serves as an important lesson for the Bene Gesserit, who are sitting at this war council making wartime decisions. This is a moment where Belanda, for example, is bloodthirsty.
Yeah.
She wants to wipe out the danger, get rid of the whores.
Yeah.
Destroy the honored Madre.
Yeah.
To teach them a lesson, to make them feel our whip. Odrade herself even thinks that.
Yeah. In today's chapters, that's so
literally
poignant.
In today's chapters. And Tegg, by bringing up Lebensraum, by bringing up these historical atrocities, war atrocities, is attempting to tamp down some of that bloodthirst.
Yeah.
He's reminding them that in our collective memories, let us not forget that Lebensraum is a reminder of how horrible things can go, of the darkest parts of human history. and where war and conflict and bloodthirst can lead to.
Yeah.
So I think it serves as an important reminder to the Bene Gesserit at that table.
Yeah. It's so fun to watch Teg's role as like knows the Bene Gesserit very well, but is not a part of it. Similar to Leto knows humanity very well, but is not a part of it. And the Bene Gesserit knows humanity very well, but is not a part of it. It's always that like you need checks and balances that are not part of your organization or part of your mentality. You need a diversity in perspectives in order to be your kind of fully realized self, which is why Murbella, as this ultimate outsider to the Bene Gesserit, is, I think, getting the weight of all of these hopes and expectations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, man. Yeah, totally. A couple of morsels that just went right over my head, my first reading. So
same.
Always appreciate how much, I mean, clearly just how much research and how much work Frank put into so much. If only he had a fucking editor for that one chapter. Anyway, that's our episode, folks. And we got an interesting bit of assigned reading for you today because the assigned reading doesn't exist. Next episode, it's a mailbag. So send your questions to us. Send us your emails. Drop them in our Discord mailbag channel. We are going to field questions in our next episode, our next book club episode. We will field questions about Chapterhouse, about this book, where we are so far, about Dune more broadly. If you have new thoughts or questions or considerations, we're happy to take those, or just about off-topic fun things. If you got, some fuck, marry, kill suggestions or whatever, throw them our way. Always happy to go off topic a bit, but let us know, send us an email, drop us those comments in the Discord. If you're listening to this on the public feed, a chance passed, but we do periodically have mailbag episodes. So if you send us an email with a question, we'll answer it eventually. So do that.
That's right.
Send it to us. Gomjabar@podcast@gmail.com. That's our email address. You know what it is, but I'll say it again. Gomjabarpodcast@gmail.com.
That's right. And of course, one quick reminder before we let you go, folks, the two best ways to support this show is to become a patron and to get yourself some Dune-themed swag from our merch store. Mm-hmm. So check out those links in the show notes below, patreon.com/Gomjabar, ad-free episodes, access to the Discord, early book club episodes, and of course, gomjabar.shop. That is a new URL, recently updated, so make sure you're clicking on the right link there. That will take you to our merch store where we have some beautifully designed work for you to show off your love of Dune and attract all of the romantic partners out there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Once they see that Coriolis escape poster hanging on your wall,
woo!
Their clothes are going to drop faster than skin from the bones during the Coriolis storm.
That's right. If you're trying to woo your special someone, forget scented candles and wine and roses.
Candles is great. Yeah.
Grab some Dune merch. Prop it up all around your bedroom and get in the mood.
Yeah. Put a sticker right on your bed.
Put that Conley sticker right on your headboard, you know?
And they're like, Conley, what's that? And you're like, I'll show you as you withdraw your sword.
Show you, babe.
It's a euphemism, maybe. Who's to say? Well, friends, there is no real ending. It's just the place where you stop the recording. But this podcast is always one step beyond logic. So help spread the word of Muad'Dib and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And be sure to check out the other shows on the Lord Party Podcast Network on lordparty.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at lore_party. We're also on YouTube. Check that out. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, whoever controls the podcast controls the universe. We'll see you on the golden path.